Hello, Rob. Good to have you here. Welcome to BetaTalks.
Thank you.
So you are the first EJ on my channel, and you're also a jumper. So do you want to tell us your type?
Double feminine, effie, se, play, consume, sleep, blast.
Right. Thank you. So the first thing I want to know is, how did you discover OP, or how did you come into, well, typology in general?
Okay, well, I got into typology back when I was on online dating apps. I saw like someone's 4 letters MBTI type on their profile, which is a really cool thing to do, by the way. Everybody should do that.
Wow, yeah.
And I was like, what is this? So I Googled it and found out about MBTI. I had like never heard of it, I don't think. Or maybe I had in passing or whatever. But so I found 16 personalities, of course. Took that, originally got INFP and was like, okay. And then yeah, I just kind of went down the rabbit hole of like trying to understand like what does this tell me about myself and all that kind of stuff. I even made a small blog back in the day.
Ooh, okay.
With myself as a ENFP at the time, thinking like, oh, this is like me gonna try and process this stuff. And I also felt like the information was kind of like all over the place, as it still is.
It
Just
is.
like people like orating on YouTube the history of MBTI, and then there's like some like Dave was like one of the resources back then that everybody like respected. He was just like a YouTuber, like and he still is.
Yeah, different form, but
So,
yeah.
yes, so I knew about this, and this is like 5 years ago.
Cool. So, you saw yourself as pretty introverted then, and also a feeler since you got like INFP or even ENFP at some point. I was thinking of your animal stack. So you're actually the most introverted of all the ENFJs. And in OP, we have 32 versions of every type. So you are the mopiest ENFJ, right? I don't know if you've seen there is this chart with like a percentage for each animal stack, like in terms of introversion, extroversion. Yeah. I don't know who made that one. Do you know?
Well, there's something from the class that they've done. I actually have like an article about the extroversion based on like a bunch of different factors, including like letters and modalities. Which
Right.
like SF play is kind of like a more roundabout play. So, that's what I have for people watching.
Interesting. Yeah.
Because then like the MM is internal, so it's like I'm pushing on myself, so I'm not pushing outward. So like Gary V versus me, it's like I'm not like pushing everybody, telling everybody what's valuable. I'm just like trying to like understand what's valuable. It's,
exactly.
That's really what like the feminine functions are doing. They're just like, oh, what's going on? I'm just like working my way around like what's out there.
So you could say that Gary V is your exact opposite within the ENFJ spectrum. So he's the most extroverted ENFJ, and you are the most introverted. Because he's a double masculine, right? And you are a double feminine.
Yep.
That's pretty interesting. Yeah. So in terms of extroversion and introversion, like, how do you see yourself? Like, do you see yourself as more introverted or extroverted? You said you had written an article about that. Like, what are your conclusions?
I wrote, that was just kind of about the general extroversion within objective personality, because like there's kind of the colloquial terms of extroversion and introversion, like just like do you like parties kind of thing.
Oh yeah. This
and then
general thing.
Yeah, so it's like which is almost like it's sort of like a mix of assertiveness and other stuff. It's not really like what extroversion and introversion that Jung was actually studying in terms of like relation to external versus internal. So that's really more what that's about. But
yeah, so
I
you were,
forgot what your question was.
yeah, so what you were discussing in that article was more the anecdotes of extroversion and introversion.
It's kind of like how sort of how extroverted would this type be relative to other types in sort of like the common parlance, I guess, of what you would call an extroverted person. Like how loud is this person?
Yeah.
Almost.
Yeah. Right.
But
so yeah. Sorry. Go on.
you had asked whether I see myself as extroverted or introverted. I really see myself like oscillating very heavily. And almost like adapting to what's needed in a room in that way. Like if I feel like someone needs to kind of like get things going, then I'll do it. But that's like the play side of myself where it's like, oh, what if we just like throw some stuff out here, see what people react to, and if like a conversation gets going, I often like sink back and just sort of understand what's going on.
Yeah, I'm curious, when you think back, what kind of thinking back would that be? Is it that you're still observing what's going on around, or are you in your own mind, your own thoughts?
No, I'm definitely like still paying attention. So
yeah,
and feeling obligated to. That's something I'm kind of noticing more and more as I understand my type, like the things I feel obligated to pay attention to and not sort of jump to conclusions for myself without like understanding where everybody else is at first, so that I don't bump into anybody, right? So like really trying to not do that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's what's going on with both of us, because we're both tribe above self. So if we connect that to what Jung was talking about in terms of extroversion, we are kind of drawn from ourselves towards the outside world. So our attention, our focus will be in that realm rather than within, like firsthand. I mean, we have both, of course, but that is how we navigate and tick, like in general. So
yeah, it's like obligated to see that input and then have that like reframe what I'm deciding for myself. Then is how I feel about it.
yeah, right. Do you often feel that you prioritize like the needs on the outside, the need of the tribe, rather than your personal needs? Or how do you balance that? Like, what's the default state or wiring for you?
So do I prioritize the needs of others before my own? I think like unconsciously that might be true. That's like one of those things that's like hard to say, like, am I really doing that? Does it even make sense? Like as a human being who has like, it's at the end of the day, you're gonna like protect yourself over others most of the time. So like I definitely see myself like trying to, I see like FETI kind of doing this balance thing where it's like what's the optimized solution here where like both of us can get what we need. So like there is like the DE spectrum and I'm a part of that spectrum, but I am like a small part of it, right? Like there's the world, and then there's like, and I see that as like sort of shifting. So when we're in a conversation here and you're trying to get something out of me, I also have my own agendas of like what I want to share. I'm trying to like meet you halfway at least, right? So
right, yeah, that's interesting that
and I see that playing out like over and over all over the place. So
yeah. So when you say that you are also a part of the tribe, so it's kind of like you are also part of the equation that is going to be solved, or yeah, you have to make it work for like the whole tribe, including yourself, because you are also a part of the tribe. But you're also saying that you're a small part of it. So you are looking at the whole, and it needs to work for all the
yeah.
members, so to
So,
speak.
so like one way to think about this is in terms of like something like taxation, right? So like taxation is in theory going to benefit everyone, right? Because they're gonna like put it towards public services that benefit everybody. So I'm like, oh, that makes sense. Like, oh, you take some of mine and it's evenly distributed. Like that, it like makes sense, right? But then like some people are like, that's not fair for the individual in certain cases, and then like some people are taxed more than others. So it's yeah, you're like trying to determine what's fair. So that's like the kind of game, right? And that one's very transparent because it's like written in law.
Right. Oh,
um,
that's interesting.
like people are arguing about what's fair, but that's like the kind of game that's like going on in my head. I don't know if you've seen Julia's video. She did like a video called the Effie game.
Mm, maybe I
Pretty good.
have. I don't know for sure. Yeah, tell me about it.
But well, I mean, I haven't seen it for a while, so I don't know if it's exactly the same as like how I'm sort of framing it in my head now. But that's kind of what's going on, where it's you're trying to maximize value across the spectrum. So it's like, oh, maybe I have to lose a little bit so that others can gain a lot, kind of thing.
Right. Yeah,
So,
yeah.
so
That's interesting.
you're just trying to even the scales across the spectrum as much as you can, and you're using TI to figure that out. Like
Mm,
I'm like, what makes sense to me that would solve this across the spectrum? So, which involves understanding what other people need, right?
mm.
So
Oh, that's really interesting to see how FE works in terms of like what you said, the taxation analogy. I really like that one. It really explains how you are thinking of the whole. You're looking at the greater good. You wanted to make it work for everyone, not just yourself, but for everyone. That's a really good point.
yeah, and everyone has like their own TI of what they think makes sense to
Mm,
be distributed, right? And so like some people are like the only way to keep this fair is to like not to limit it. That's like the conservative point of view, right? But
right. Yeah. Interesting. And I also feel when you're talking that your identity, like your TI is very strong. So you have your FE at the top and your TI last, but because it's masculine, maybe it's like kind of clear, and I can see that you're standing on like a solid foundation when it comes to yourself, like what is my place here in the tribe? I do have a spot. I'm important as well, and so forth.
yeah. And I mean, the thing with demons is you don't really see where it's a struggle until you like go to the place where it's a struggle. Like this is like a place I'm comfortable with. I've like reprocessed this stuff, right? It's like this is how I'm framing my perspective of this. So I feel like I'm not gonna step on any toes with this information that I'm
Yeah,
presenting here because it's like, oh, this is my perspective on it. I've thought it through. I feel kind of comfortable with it. But
yeah,
when you like put me in a position where it's like, oh, you need to like learn this, and there's like pressure on me to produce something that others are going to see, that's where I like have more anxiety about
mm.
it.
That's interesting. I was talking to my twin type in my last interview, and he said something along the lines of when you have FE, and I don't know how it works when it's like you have it first and we have it second, if there is any difference. But the point was that it's kind of hard to speak to a larger group, and it's easier to speak like more one-on-one because there are so many things to factor in. like for all the people in the tribe. So it's almost impossible, to have this message that kind of reaches everyone, or engage with everyone on a personal level. I don't know how to phrase it, but do you find that it's easier for you to have a one-on-one conversation and that will somehow be more meaningful? Or do you feel that you can use your play function and kind of reach a broader group?
No, I definitely do find that it's easier to have more one-on-one conversations because everyone's kind of it makes it easier to align because people aren't all over the place.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe that is something that has something to do with effie. Like, yeah, you're really scanning the values of the person you have in front of yourself and who that person really is. And yeah, it's harder to interact with a group when you have the kind of in-depth understanding of people. I don't know, maybe that's more me with the NIFE at top. I don't know, just theorizing at this point. Anyways, let's go back to the questions that I had here. And you have already told us about your type and your journey into OP. And since you got your type, like, are there things that you didn't know about yourself or never, observed before, things that you have discovered? Has OP been helpful in any way for you?
I certainly hope it's been helpful. It's hard to pin down a single thing that it has been particularly illuminating. I've actually been trying to post on Twitter recently of sort of small epiphanies I'm having as I'm processing my type and sort of seeing the ways in which I'm getting stuck in my framing of things, I guess is one way to put it. What are the patterns I'm seeing in myself, and how does that apply to sort of EJs in general, and how am I coming awake to this stuff that's happening, right? Because I mean, I didn't see myself as a decider before, and I'm still going through that process of really understanding what that means, in terms of not allowing myself to move when I come to a conclusion on something. Like if I came to the conclusion on the taxes analogy there, and you like challenging it, I don't know, that might have flared up in me something where it's like, no, I thought this through, trust me, it's like that kind of thing where please don't make me move on this.
Right. Yeah.
It's like this thing that's part of what I'm seeing in myself, where it's like, why don't you trust my conclusion on this? That's one of those things where it's like, I don't want to have to move on this thing that's kind of settled already. So that's a big part of what I'm learning. I think that sort of decider aspect of it, because it's not like I can't do TI, that's not really what it means in OPS to be a decider. It's not like the inferior is inaccessible to me because I'm doing it in Consume a lot of the time. It's just when that gets challenged, I'm like, well, maybe you're right, and I feel very obligated to move with the tribe.
Yeah.
If what I personally found to be true isn't valuable to others. So
yeah.
And there's also patterns I'm sort of seeing in myself, in the ways in which I isolate myself so that I don't have to bring those things to be challenged by people. If I thought about that for myself and then never told you about it, no one would ever challenge me on it. So I could just sit in my hole and be happy about that. But
yeah.
And we could talk about other stuff. We could do SF play, and I'm just whatever. It's all good. But
yeah, that's interesting. That's really interesting. And I'm thinking like part of it should be maybe that it is a demon. Like for me also, I have TI as a demon. And I already have my kind of, yeah, whatever I have, thought through the way you say, it's solid. I know what I think. And also don't like to be questioned or debate because it's something personal. I guess that's how TI works in general. But maybe if you have it at the top, you are more willing to defend it because it's a savior. But when it's an inferior function, quote unquote, inferior doesn't mean that you can't use it as much, but at least
just what they call the fourth slot in like MBTI. But.
Exactly, yeah. Then it's kind of draining, I guess, because also if I compare that to my sensory, which I have last, it's really draining for me to kind of explain things in the sensory. I mean, I know them and all that, but I really don't want to bring them up or go into detail with those things. Like that's too much work somehow. Well, anyways, I'm just thinking about the inferior function and how that plays out. So maybe that is part of it, that it is personal, and also that it is a demon. So it's harder to work like actively and defend it actively. And maybe also I'm thinking with you, because you have double masculine sleep, that plays in as well, that it's very solid. Your conclusions on things are very well-founded and kind of unmovable, maybe. Do you think that has anything to do with it?
With the not wanting to share, or
Yeah, not wanting to share, not wanting to defend it.
Yeah, I mean, I find it difficult to communicate exactly what kind of conclusion I've come to, and it's to actually explain it clearly takes a lot of time, which I like writing, so that's like why I have a website. So it kind of gives me the time to like really like lay out stuff in a way that I think is going to be digestible to most people. So that makes it easier, but I sort of have this fear of being kind of misunderstood when I'm presenting these things, because it's like, oh, you're just like not getting it. You're not seeing me and like what conclusions I've come to. I've been looking into the Enneagram recently, and that seems like a pretty Enneagram 9 pattern. I don't know if you know much about that. But.
Yeah, I've read a little bit about the Enneagram. Yeah, interesting. Yeah. So conflict avoidant, would that be the word to summarize?
Yeah, it's that, and it's just also this the sense of like you're not going to fully see what I've sort of come to. It's just like so personal, like there's so many angles to it. It's like I can give you a piece of it, but I can't give you all of it, because it's like
Exactly.
it's me, kind of,
Yeah,
It's like
it's fully integrated in you, in your beliefs and whatever you value, and yeah, all of that.
yeah, I have this description of like how I thought TI works in relation to TE on my website, which is like this thing
Yes,
where
please.
you're sort of just like figuring out your route to somewhere based on like what makes sense to you, and without like pinging off of anyone else. So you're just like, oh, maybe you just like started making some random turns one day because you're just like trying to test things out, and that's like how you came to this weird conclusion. And then you like tell somebody else about it, and they're like, why do you go that way? You should just like take this way. That's what everybody does. It's just like, no, but no, this is what works for me, because I like to be able to drive by this place and like see what's going on there, or I like this route through So it like sounds like likes, right? But it's like this works for me because it oh I've like done it so many times. I'm like used to it. I do it on autopilot. Like all that kind of stuff is just like rolled into why this is like the route that works for me, right? Like it's very personal. It's like I could tell you you could take this and you just like might not get it. And it's like there's there's something to like the way you've done it before and all that stuff. It's which sounds a little like SI-ish, but I don't know, it's just like it's personal.
Right. As it always is with all the introverted functions. And also in the end of the day, like you are the one responsible for your own actions. So maybe taking in some random TE advice or idea wouldn't be such a good idea because that person is not responsible for you anyways.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So yeah, so the issue would rather be to just stand on your own decision and do it with pride and just ignore, kind of ignore, not that you're not taking in anything from the outside, but if you have spent a lot of time to figure out what is working for you, then just believe in it and do it regardless. But I guess there is a conflict for us because we have the FE, so we still want to be considerate of the tribe's perspective and what they value. So that kind of makes us feel bad. So we know what we should do or what we need to do, what we want to do. But then we have the other side of the coin. And it is like, how is it perceived on the outside? And how does this affect the tribe? And how do they view me if I do this? So it's kind of a tension there, I think, for us having FE as a savior. But with our masculine TI, we still know where we stand and we still know what we want and what works for us. But it's to, kind of defend that.
Yes. So like building on that analogy with the driving course, it's like I know why I'm making these decisions. It's not like it's just like random necessarily. Like maybe I took some random decisions before, but like the ones I settled on, like it makes sense to me for specific reasons. And then like the fear then is that like someone's going to be like that's a dumb way to get there, like call me dumb because like you just like aren't getting like why it's like nice for me to go this way with a lot of like stop signs instead of like red lights because like for some reason I don't like red lights or whatever, you know. Or like the stop and go traffic on the highway. I would rather just like have clear stop signs. There's actually like a way I used to go to work that had like red lights instead of going on the highway where it was like this merge point that was really annoying. So I started going that way because it's just like I could just sit at the red light and sort of zone out other than like have to like brake and unbrake all the time.
That too.
So, just like this hurts my leg. I don't like it. So
exactly. Yeah. What was I thinking? I think the worst thing maybe is for us with the TI in the stack to feel maybe misunderstood or judged. And kind of the thing that people think we are dumb and wrong for some reason. And as you say, the TI is so deep, so we don't even stand a chance to explain it fully to the outside world. While TE seems to be more, they are not sensitive to being wrong in that sense. And I guess that is because it is more superficial. It isn't as deep. They haven't been thinking for days and days or months and years on about this same thing. So
so to like have a comparison, they might be like doing the same thing where they like come up with their own route, but it's like because they FI reasons, like they really like I don't know what gas station they're passing and like swinging for some coffee or something like that. And it's like very particular why they like that, which I've like have trouble understanding. It's just like
Right.
it's like, oh, I like Dunkin' more than Starbucks because my reasons, but it's not like super personal. Like if you tell me you don't like Dunkin', I'm like, whatever.
Exactly. Yeah. Coffee is coffee anyways.
Yeah.
So yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. So in terms of the double masculine sleep, do you feel that there are any challenges that comes with it being double masculine? Have you noticed anything?
I don't. That's not something I've spent too much time processing in terms of like how it's a challenge for me. It's sort of something I've tried to process more in terms of like, okay, this is like what I'm working towards for having something solid. I'm like scanning all day so that I can adapt my strategy underneath that allows me to sort of like work within the outside world more efficiently. So yeah, that's so like rather than having like the sleep savior and like really refining my strategy over and over all day so that I can then engage with the world in the play sense. Like use this isn't like a strict analogy here or anything, but that's kind of how I see like the opposite happening, where in the interview I did with Kendrick, Uzair was talking about how in like this game of like soccer or something, he would like be like strategizing and trying to like figure out like what's like the most efficient way, and then where I would just like kind of like do some stuff and like try and adapt as I'm going. Like it's just really that learn as you go kind of thing, and then like the strategy kind of just comes after that. It's like, oh, this is my strategy because that's what I did.
Right. Oh, so you kind of use maybe your play, your feminine play that is very movable to try out different things, and then later on you can anchor it in your NT sleep that is double masculine.
Yeah, it's like this. So you're just doing a lot of different stuff and sort of trying to adapt to what other people are doing, and then where you end up from that adaptation becomes like the strategy,
right?
Essentially.
Exactly.
So like this.
So trial and error is kind of the method.
Yeah, and this is sort of something that I'm seeing myself doing in like video games and stuff. Like I play first-person shooters, and I'm just sort of adapting to the team. And it's like, oh, if the team is like other people on the team are going and picking up the power weapons, I don't have to worry about that as much because there's like somebody that's like on that on the team. But if nobody's doing that, I need to kind of like take on that role and adapt my strategy. So especially when you're not like talking to people actively in the game, you have to kind of pay attention to what the other people are doing and sort of see where you can adjust. So like if everybody's like running for the flag and no one's defending, maybe I should defend, that kind of thing. This is making sense to you? I don't know.
Yeah. I can. I mean, it's an analogy for me because I haven't been doing it in real life, so to speak. I don't really play games, but I understand what you're saying. And basically, I mean, you could do that.
It's really paying attention to what's being undervalued all the time, right? And like trying to be like, oh, well, then my strategy should adapt to what's being undervalued here because I can take advantage of that value that's being left on the table.
Right. Interesting. Yeah. I'm just trying to see what functions are playing out when you're doing that. But maybe that is for processing afterwards.
I'm seeing it as a lot of scanning of like what other people are doing. I'm paying attention to what they're actually like going and doing and valuing.
Right.
Unconsciously, they're just doing that, and then like I can adapt and build my strategy because I'm not set in stone there until after I do that.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. That sounds a lot like you are scanning both like what people are doing, so with the effie, and then also the facts, like what is actually going on the table. So that's the SE. So it sounds like the SF play there, and that you are very flexible and able to kind of move around and try different strategies and
Yeah, and it's kind of like I narrowed down a bunch of different NT strategies based on like what other people do. So it's like I listed off a few different ones there, and it's not like an infinite number, right? So and eventually, like this will be like me building up my strategy when there's like people that are undervaluing power weapons on my team. This is like the way I play when I do that. So I have like a bunch of them instead of just like one that I'm constantly refining almost. So it's like a bunch of different things, and that's where you kind of get like the what is it? I don't know what to call it exactly, but like the person that was like different faces in front of different people almost. It's like they're shifting their strategy based on like who they're around.
Yeah. Do you do that as well?
With Effie, you can, a lot of people get like shit for that.
Because they are not consistent, so they are kind of chameleons
like,
then.
Right. Yeah, the kind of like social chameleon sort of thing. That's
it's
one of the
not
things that people can get
appreciated.
Well, it depends. Some people like hate that kind of thing because they're like maybe they're masculine DI savior or something, or whatever, or maybe they're feminine DI savior and they're just like they see the tendency in themselves to want to move for others, but they're like, no, I want to. And they push back on the tribe so that they can sort of be themselves.
Right.
I don't know exactly how that's playing out, but because that's not me, but there's people that have like a strong reaction to somebody that seems like they're shifting a lot depending on the people. And I don't know if I necessarily do that. I'm not really tracking it, but
sounds like you are.
To me, it feels like I'm more comfortable around certain people expressing my sense of self. It's like more of that would come out because there's like, I want to say like a true me.
Of course, yes.
Somewhere.
Yeah, and that's your introverted functions that represents that.
Yeah, so there's one NT that represents all of me, but then there's like certain parts that I show to different people where it seems like that's what's needed in the situation. That's kind of what I'm talking about with the first person shooter analogy. It's like, oh, this is the part of my strategy I'm going to use this game, because I was saying there's multiple, but really I guess it's all one, and I'm just using different parts of it, right? So
yeah, and you do have like that flexibility, and again, I think it is the FE and the SF play that makes it flexible for you, that you're able to do that. And maybe, I don't know, maybe the people who are annoyed by it, they don't have those functions, or at least not as in a savior state. So yeah, it's kind of your superpower in the context. Yeah.
I'm not like ashamed of it or anything. It's just that's just kind of what happens unconsciously. So
exactly. Yeah, and it sounds useful as well. I mean, you're using it to do your thing and be successful, so it's good. Yeah, I think with our functions, again back to being FE savior, I think what you're saying, like revealing your identity, revealing your true self, is kind of the hardest part for us, and it takes a lot to do that, like to build that trust with someone. And I think what we need is the acceptance on the front end, and when we feel safe just doing our FE with people that isn't as personal, then we are willing to expand and go further and show like our introverted functions as well. So that seems like a struggle that you have as well.
Yeah, it's like your TI is your bag of tricks. You gotta use your FE to figure out which tricks to pull out.
Yeah.
Which tricks are these people gonna appreciate?
Exactly. So, yeah.
That's kind of what it is.
Do you ever feel that you have like a goal to tap in even more to that DI, like try and not care as much about the tribe's opinions and just pick the trick that you want to pick, like this is what I want to do?
I mean, I certainly see in some situations where it's that's what I'm trying to do. Like I'm working on my app, and I'm not necessarily like asking people like what do they want to see in this app all the time. I have like a general idea of what I think would be valuable to other people from like all my experiences being around this community, and like what sort of questions people are asking and might want to know about a certain type, right? Like what kind of information would be good to have at your fingertips when you look up a type. That's the kind of stuff I'm like thinking about and trying to sort of satisfy. It's like it's for me, it's for them. I'm not. One of the nice things about code is most people don't actually see like the way in which you're like putting it together. They just see like that end thing. Unfortunately, my code is open source, so they could look at it and criticize it if they wanted to. But
oh no, that could be sensitive. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this, I can defend myself by saying I'm just kind of like throwing it together in my free time.
Yeah, sure. But there is another like deeper layer to it as well. Like this is something that you believe is valuable or could be valuable, and that is kind of tied to your identity as well, like you doing something important.
That's the thing.
On some level, I mean,
like the values don't feel that personal to me. Like if somebody doesn't like it, I'm like disappointed because I put a lot of work into it. So there's like an investment in that sense, and it's in some way like the things that I create are an extension of myself. In that like I think this is like a good way to going back to that sort of root analogy and being like, oh, this is like the route that I like. And if somebody just like took that route, or maybe just like a thing of music that I liked, and got enjoyment out of it, like that's something that's like really exciting to me.
Yeah, you
almost
get
like
that.
some sort of like NF blast to that. Like it's like an aspirational thing where it's like I found some like thing, and was able to like transfer it to you, and you got value out of it. Like that's like the thing that like feels extremely like, elusive to me. But
yeah, I can identify with that as well. Like when
pointing to something and being like, this is going to be valuable to you. It just, I feel like I'm constantly pointing in the wrong spot.
But if you succeed, do you feel like when you have used that NF blast and actually given value to the tribe, and you get that kind of ping back and that feedback that shows you that it really has had some profound value to that member of the tribe or several members of the tribe, like would you say for you that that is like kind of the reward or this, yeah, like it's worth it because you see that it's actually helpful?
I would say it's a little weird because it feels so fleeting. Like sort of my baseline is almost like I just like crack a joke and someone laughs, and it's like you're getting validation right away. Whereas with like these things that I'm like taking all this time to like put together and then present to someone, and then they go, nice. It's like I did all that, and then it's just like the same reaction. It's like cracking a joke. So that's like something I'm kind of working through and trying to process in terms of like the validation at the end of this process, and like trying to determine that it's worth for myself.
Right.
But yeah, also just like creating something that's lasting and like putting out output consistently. That's kind of the other aspirational part of NF Blast for me.
Yeah, sharing your information with the tribe.
Yeah, and like doing that consistently,
Mm.
like creating outlets for myself to do that. So like doing that with blog, kind of, I stopped posting. So there's like a lot of different ways I can do it, and that's sort of what I'm trying to just like understand, like where I want to be doing that. Just like have a bunch of different ways to do it if I want, so I can switch it up, and I don't have to feel stuck, but I can continue to put things out there. So like I've been doing that a little bit with Twitter. Like I'm trying to be like, okay, I had something, I can share it. And it's kind of like consistent SF play in terms of like, oh, I had found something valuable, share it, found something valuable, share it. But that's like, for me, sort of building up to something that's like greater than all of it combined, right? That some way it's like, oh, this is my Twitter timeline where you can sort of see this blast building up.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know.
Wow. Yeah. And also, I think even for yourself, going back to that will be kind of interesting then in the future, and see like how it has progressed and how you have improved and so forth. So
yeah, so I'm enjoying that. There's not a whole lot of people following me on Twitter at the moment, but there's not a big OPS community in particular, but just kind of
not yet.
putting things out there.
Right.
So.
Yeah. It's got to start somewhere.
Trailblazing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That is what we are doing, I think, at this point. I have noticed in previous interviews with you as well that you always have some instruments in the background. I see your guitar there. I'm a little bit curious about your music. Do you
I don't play that.
No? Do you play something else, or is it just for decoration?
It's my wife's. So
okay.
Those are my clothes though on my laundry bin.
Okay. Yeah, I have this theory that at least the audios, I think the audios in the beta Quadra are into making music. I don't know how that plays out for the other modalities, but yeah, there are a lot of audio betas that are making music, their own music. But you're not one of them, or?
Well, I used to play drums.
Oh, okay.
When I was younger, my parents encouraged me to play an instrument, and I thought drums were appealing, and sort of like I could relate it to what we were talking about with SF play, just sort of like figuring it out as you go. It feels very just like rhythmic, just kind of try things out. In reality, a little bit more systematic than that. Definitely some like baseline skills you kind of need to just like hone before you can do that.
Yeah.
At least that's how it kind of felt to me. But
yeah.
So I never really got very good, but
you tried it and you did it for some time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but not much music experience to talk about.
Maybe more consume than blasting it. Consuming music more than producing it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I definitely listen to music.
Right.
It's kind of strange when people say they don't listen to music.
Yeah, that's interesting. Sometimes I'm like asking people, like, if you would have to choose between never listening to any music again or never creating your own music. That's kind of maybe an extreme question, but for
Right.
for myself, like, of course you want to listen to music, but if I had to choose between the two, I would prefer to continue making music because it's kind of my way of expressing myself. It would be like stop talking, I think. Like, yeah.
What kind of music do you make?
My music is more personal. I don't really make music for other people. I make it for myself. It's kind of like I guess
for your MM
poetry.
consume?
Yeah, maybe more like, yeah, like journaling or something, just processing and using the instrument in the process, kind of. But sometimes, you know, there is a song that I actually finished making, and I may share it or may not with someone. But yeah, it's kind of very therapeutic, I would say. It's a way to express myself. I think also with the NF, like these functions are, they are kind of nonverbal, So somehow I find it easier to express myself with art, with music, than talking.
Right.
Yeah. So,
It's
anyways,
like
yeah,
abstract emotion rather than
exactly. And
trying to
those,
specify anything.
right, exactly. And I can kind of incorporate all of it in that, in the tones, like
Yeah.
in the harmonies and in the feeling of it, in the vibe of it. I can like encapsulate whatever is going on the inside, my
Yeah.
experience of life.
I see that a lot with like the ENFPs and stuff like that too.
Yeah, I think it can be quite an effie somehow, like NF thing.
Like Bo Burnham, and there's a lot of like singing comedians that do that kind of stuff that I think are like NEFIs
Yeah, yeah,
access.
yeah, probably. Um, I was thinking of the opposite of NF to channel change a bit, ST. So we both have ST consume. What do you consume? Like, can you see that it's connected to ST or somehow applicable in the ST?
I guess a lot of what I consume is sort of informing that strategy I was kind of talking about before. Um, so it is trying to serve some kind of adaptation to like, so I was going to talk about this earlier, but I didn't really get to it. I sort of see like the first layer, like the first animal is kind of like everything, my starting point for everything in
Mm-hmm.
terms of like I'm trying to see what other people are doing so that I can start to build my strategy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like where do I fit in here? And then the consume is really trying to adapt myself to that, um, and find my place, right? And then eventually it settles. So it's really just like seeing where I am in relation to everyone else. Um,
So what would that be like more concretely? Can you give some SE examples? Like you're
um,
supporting, so you're finding kind of your way with the SF play at the top, and then the consume is kind of supporting that.
yes. So, I mean, in a very broad sense, a lot of what I am trying to do is find my place in the tribe. Like,
Mm-hmm.
who am I? Just like constantly trying to understand that, even just like, which is why I'm like really interested in this typology stuff, in terms of like trying to understand myself better.
Mm-hmm.
So that becomes just like watching like typology YouTube videos and trying to relate that back to myself. Um,
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense
yeah,
in reality as well, like in your life. So that
yeah.
is a very concrete form of consume. Like, yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of it is just taking in this information from like podcasts about typology, interviews, trying to be like, okay, how does this update like how I understand myself now, right? Um, just constantly questioning myself and trying to be like, oh, do I need to move based on this information?
Mm.
And like just seeing sort of very like how it's like ST versus like NT consume, is kind of hard for me to see sometimes because it does feel like it's like sinking into that NT sleep, updating the strategy. But I guess I'm just like focusing on like what people are are saying more specifically and not making any broad abstractions from that. So that's the way in which I see it as ST.
Yeah, I'm thinking if it actually, regardless of what we are consuming, that we still want to, as you say, tie it to our own reality, like our view of reality, somehow understanding our selves, or our worldview, when it comes to the real stuff, so to speak. Yeah, I mean, SE is something that is tied to the sensory world, so I guess we could call that a form of reality.
Yeah, I guess the way it's which is SE is just like what are people experiencing, and like how do I do that thing, or how can I like understand that thing? It's like it's both of those. So, or like something similar to it, right? Because like the feminine SE is pretty fuzzy in terms of like, oh, I get like a general picture of what they're describing, and then I can sort of see it in myself. I'm not looking for the exact words of what they said or anything like that. So,
right, yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. So it's kind of also like me overview talking constantly, understanding both oneself and tribe. Like it's that kind of goal with the consume, or the result of the consume, in a sense. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah.
I think so.
That's how I interpret it. But I always have my OI box here, so I just want to put everything there. Maybe you said something new that I should take in. I don't know. I'm going to rewatch this interview and see if I can learn more.
Yeah, I would say that is something that I do see with the sleep as sort of like a limitation, where it is like I have sort of a hard awareness of my sort of understanding of, say, like OP, and then all the new information is sort of challenging what's in that box. And I'm very open to it, like, because I'm sort of leading with the sort of feminine side of things. Like I'm willing to really explore outside of that, but whether it actually gets in there, it has to like really fit in with sort of what I already have in there. And we were talking about typing a little bit before, like as an example for that. It's like, oh, maybe I have like initial impression of somebody as like an exact 512 type when I'm watching their typing video. And then I'm like trying to challenge that constantly with the new information I'm getting. And how successful I am at doing that it depends.
Right.
That's kind of
But
something
still,
I'm trying to work on, and trying not to do that, but also like trying to figure out like what's my new strategy if it's not guessing and then checking.
right.
So
yeah, because you have that OE, because you are OE savior in contrast to myself. So you kind of want to find the new information, and you kind of want to maybe disprove yourself as well. Like, yeah. And I just want to confirm that first bias that I had. That's what my OI does. So I have to work against that, you know. It's kind of a struggle.
It's like, yeah, I guess I don't trust my guess. It's like I know it's probably wrong, right? I mean, it's 1 in 512. You can just like statistically, it's pretty pretty unlikely.
Chances are we are wrong.
At least about something, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But